So this next panel is, now we're moving to the Northern Rockies region, where we've got Montana, Idaho, and Wyoming, and what's going on there with wolves. We've got these amazing speakers. We've got Mark Cook, although it says Kim Bean in the red there, and Kim Bean from Wolves of the Rockies in Montana. We have Kristen Combs and Lisa Robertson in Wyoming. Lisa's from Wyoming Wildlife Advocacy, and Lisa is from Wyoming Untrapped. We have Talacy Brooks, and we have Garrett Dutcher from Idaho. Garrett is with Living with Wolves, and Talacy is with Western Watersheds. Thank you all so much for joining us today, and we're really excited to hear what you guys have to say and what you have to recommend. I think we're going to start with, we'll start with Montana, and then we'll move to Wyoming, and then actually we're going to move to Idaho and then finish up with Wyoming.
Great. Hello, everybody. My name is Mark Cook, and I'm with Wolves of the Rockies. It's pretty bad here in the Rockies right now, or at least in Montana. To help you better understand the current war on wolves playing out in Montana at the state capitol, there's some things you should know. There's 2.6 million cattle, according to the Department of Livestock in Montana. There's 225,000 sheep in Montana. Our elk population is around 135,000, which by law is more than Montana wants. Now keep in mind that when wolves were reintroduced in 1995, we only had 95,000 elk. Lastly, we have about 560,000 whitetail and mule deer. Last year, we lost 60 cattle to wolves in Montana. We lost 49 sheep to wolves in Montana. These livestock producers were reimbursed for those losses from a special state fund set up to help ranchers. Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks leadership is very confused. They say we have approximately 1,200 wolves in Montana. The boots on the ground biologists say that we have between 800 and 1,000. So the fact is the department doesn't really even know how many wolves we had, but I can assure you it's not 1,200. The last wolf killing season, Montana killed approximately 330 wolves legally by trapping and hunting. Also, what they don't tell you is Wildlife Service control actions killed 60 wolves. There's a special Senate bill called 200 that allows an individual, if they feel threatened or their property feels threatened, they can kill wolves. That's another 20. And poachers that we know of killed around 40 wolves. So the total wolves that we know killed were 450. For the longest time, we've been hearing from the hunting and trapping community, with the help of Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, that there needs to be more tools for their toolbox to kill and control wolf populations in Montana. It's so bad now that they can't fit all those wolf killing tools in a toolbox. They now need a wolf killing tool shed. Casey?
Hi, I'm Casey York, president of Trap Free Montana Public Lands out of the Bitterroot. So as Mark talked about the word tools, they sound helpful, benign, harmless, but they're not tools. Traps and snares are weapons and of indiscriminate mass destruction. With them, Montana's legislature is pulling out the big guns, setting us back 100 years and bringing back bad bills. Usually there's 2 trapping bills a session. Last session were 5, 2 were ours with Wolves of the Rockies. Now there's over 12 trapping bills, mostly to destroy wolves and any other creatures in the path. Grizzlies, bison, and black bears are also being targeted in Montana with advancing disastrous bills. And as we speak about these bills, the tools that are passing, one is to allow snaring of wolves. Snares are cables that tighten, strangling, cutting off the blood supply to whichever body part it catches. They're lightweight, they only cost a couple of dollars, they're inconspicuous, and therefore a trapper's favorite. They're also legal year-round in Montana. But currently, only leg hold, foothold traps are allowed for wolves. Snares for wolves will be stronger and with bigger loops for certain to catch larger animals such as moose. And we have another bill that increases the trapping season on wolves by 30%. The season will now run, if it continues as it's going, from the first Monday after Thanksgiving until March 15th. This will result in trapping later stage pregnant female wolves and grizzlies, hungry grizzlies, before they go into hibernation and after they emerge. To top it off, the trappers and killers have another bill, so they'll be reimbursed for their costs for traps, meals, lodging, towards a snowmobile. It's a bounty bill coming out of an Idaho organization, but as the chair told us during the hearing, do not call it a bounty. Like with tools, we want to sugarcoat it, and do not confuse the legislature with the facts. But the facts are wolf pelts are selling for over $300 now. Tying all these bills nicely in a bow is the Wolf Extermination Bill, which mandates the Wildlife Commission, who, by the way, are appointed by Governor Giannaforte, to reduce the wolves down to the bare minimum, but avoid relisting. In other words, from this estimated 800 to 1,200 wolves, depending on who's talking, down to 15 breeding pairs and 150 wolves. And to do so, they're allowing the use of bait for hunting, night shooting, one tag for multiple wolves, trapping, snaring, and any other unethical method that suits their fancy, like poisoning, denning, killing derbies are all permitted. Preserving this forevermore, there's a constitutional amendment who I'm watching right now to see if it's going to pass, and that would make hunting, fishing, and trapping a right. Currently in Montana, we voted overwhelmingly to support hunting and fishing, but not trapping. The scary part also in this bill is it makes killing wildlife the preferred management means to manage wildlife. And it also says all of these horrible tools, the snaring, even poisoning, killing derbies, the whack 'em, run 'em over with a snowmobile, will be preserved. Anything that's currently legal now will be preserved in this constitutional amendment. We need 2/3 for it to pass, and today we needed two legislators to switch their vote in order to kill this bill in the House. And it's going on now. The vote is going on now. So a little anxious here. If it passes, it'll go before the Montana registered voters November 2022. Although trapping is bipartisan, these bills are passing easily 2/3 the majority, with maybe 1 to 3 Republicans voting against it. Once they're passed, they go to Governor Giannaforte to veto or sign. He's a trapper, a billionaire, a lifelong member of the Montana Trappers Association. So where is this headed? Kim Bean?
Hey everybody, I'm Kim Bean with Wolves of the Rockies and All Things Wolf and Wild podcast. So why is this happening? Well, Montana has had a long-running war on wolves, and their fate is in the hands of Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, as well as the extreme right-leaning legislature, which we're dealing with right now, as Casey said. The Wild Wild West, after 25 years, is still angry with this feeling that the federal government has overstepped by reintroducing wolves into Yellowstone National Park in Idaho. I guess you could say that they feel they should be the only predator on the landscape, the human predator. So to add insult to injury, we've lost a long run of democratic governance that helped to stave off some of this insanity. And we've acquired a very Trumpian-style governor who's anti-wolf, anti-predator, and he holds the future of wolves in his hands, as fellow trapper and Montana Representative Paul Fielder and Senator Bob Brown's horrendous wolf kill bills are crossing his desk now. So make no mistake, this is a very well orchestrated plan where the powers that be in fish, wildlife, and parks are silencing the experts that can speak against these bills or tools, as Mark and Casey just spoke about. They're silencing science. So with this newly installed government and carefully selected mouthpieces in place, factual information is not being presented to the legislators. So these bills are passing the Senate, and we now have the potential of killing 1,000 wolves with only approximately 1,150 on the landscape. And those numbers are based on a ballpark figure mathematics called population occupancy modeling, or POM. These numbers can be manipulated, okay, by the powers that be, Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. So basically what I'm saying is we don't really know how many wolves we actually have in Montana. And they want to kill at least 85% of those. Connect these dots, okay? So we have a state governed by anti-predator folks that are happy to play into the hands of an anti-predator Fish, Wildlife, and Parks who are catering to a small portion of the population, your trappers, your outfitters, and other special interest groups. So let's circle back. So back to the original question, why are they doing this? It's fear. They are scared and they claim that Montana heritage is under fire and that someone out there is going to take away their trapping, their outfitting, and their hunting privileges. The problem with this theory is that we can't find anyone out there trying to take away anyone's right to sustainable hunting. The facts are this, and this is very important to understand. Wolves get in the way of making money off of the big game, and Montana wants to continue to commercialize that abundance of wildlife. They don't want to share their profits with other predators. So this is fear mongering from special interests that are instilling fear in those that don't or won't do the research to find that this is just a tactic to get them on board, and it's working. Fear is an amazing component within the GOP. We don't have to look far back to see that fear is a tactic to make people react. So that's what's happening in Montana in a fast and furious statement. There are ways that you can help inside the state. There are ways that you can help outside the state. And I'm just going to kind of open this up to Mark, Casey, and myself and kind of give you some insight there as well. Mark, Casey.
Well, I'll pipe in here for a second here. I think we get a lot of people very passionate about wolves in particular in Montana. And so they definitely want to come help. They come to Montana to see the wolves. Tourism is Montana's second and fastest growing industry. So we need you. The legislature doesn't want to hear from you. They've been very rude to people that have tried to speak. They care about getting reelected. So they don't want to hear from people out of Montana, but your voice is very, very powerful. And on both sides, these are our wildlife. As our former governor said, people don't come to Montana for our Walmarts. They come for our great, beautiful public lands and the wildlife. So we really encourage residents, contact the Department of Tourism. There should be a link there for them. Be respectful. Don't blame them. Some people have been attacking them. They're not making these bills, but that's a huge piece that people can do. And spread the word, amplify what's happening.
Mark?
For all of you watching, there's materials that have been provided, and also you can reach out to these guys. We are going to have an hour at the end of the day to have a powwow about this. So we're going to move on to Idaho right now, and perhaps we can follow up later in the day with Montana. Thanks, guys.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Hi. So welcome to the Idaho panel. I'm Taliesin Brooks with Western Watersheds Project. I'm a staff attorney here based in Boise, Idaho. And with me today is Garrick Dutcher. So I'll let him introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Garrick Dutcher with Living with Wolves. We're located in central Idaho in the Wood River Valley. Taliesin, who should launch this thing?
Well, so what I was thinking is Garrick will give an overview of kind of what's been happening with wolves in Idaho, and I'll weigh in as seems appropriate if he misses anything, which I doubt he will. And then I will give you a list of things that you can do to try and help wolves in Idaho. And I'll say, just as a preface, that Montana essentially appears to be borrowing Idaho's model. Things in here for wolves are not good and have not been good, and they're not really getting better. So we need all the help we can get.
Okay, thanks, Talisi. Okay, so as wolves were recovering in the Northern Rockies, DPS, there had been several attempts to delist them through legislation and through litigation. And every time there was a legislative attempt, it was turned over and rejected, or it was turned over by litigation, or the legislature itself would decide, hey, this is a decision that the ESA can handle, and it should be governed by that. So then in 2011, our DPS did get officially delisted from the Endangered Species Act as an act of Congress and it was a rider. It wasn't a standalone act of Congress because, like I said, all of those were eventually rejected. But this one was never debated. It was tacked on to the federal budget bill, and in 2011, and it was a rider, and the government was under threat of shutdown. Obviously, wolves have nothing to do with the federal budget, but this rider slipped through. And in that rider, it said the decision was not going to be subjected to future judicial review, which banned one of our three branches of government, something most of us thought in 8th grade U.S. history class was not possible. Then there was a 5-year oversight period where the federal government provided some funding to the states in that DPS and distinct population segment of the Northern Rockies. And during that oversight period, states began to kind of ratchet up their pressure on wolves. In 2012, it was just kind of beginning here in Idaho, and the progression we've seen in the past 9 years has been rather dramatic. Right away in 2011, as wolves were being delisted, our governor at the time, Butch Otter, declared a disaster emergency in the state, saying that, outdoor activities were no longer safe. People's livelihoods and people's safety was under threat by these, monstrous Canadian wolves, and they did include that kind of rhetoric in the bill itself. So we had a state of emergency declared then, which I believe is still in place. So the Wolf Depredation Control Board followed in 2014. Certainly a lot of things happened in between them, but that was another large milestone of anti-wolf activity, which established a fund and a board that would take $400,000 a year from the taxpayer dollars coffer, another $110,000 from the Department of Ag, and another $110,000 from Idaho Fish and Game. Montana, I hope that your state doesn't follow in those tracks. So the funding from Fish and Game is actually designed to kill wolves explicitly for wherever Fish and Game feels like their elk numbers are not where they want them to be. And as with Montana, our elk population is within a few percentage points of our all-time high. So statewide, we have robust elk at around 125,000 or 120,000. We have what's estimated to have been in the last Fish and Game estimate, 900 wolves, and that was a minimum estimate as of early February. March and February are some of the bloodiest months when it comes to wolf hunting and trapping and lethal control. That's when they run actions in the Lolo and other places to do lethal control. So that population probably would be a minimum, according to their figures, a minimum of maybe 700 at this point, given that recent take. And then we're going to have our puppy crop coming up here in the next month. And that will obviously bolster the population again. However, we are losing about 500 wolves a year here in Idaho due to the hunt and trap and Wildlife Services lethal control. So the Wolf Depredation Control Board funds Wildlife Services to do lethal control, or Fish and Game to do lethal control. There are none of those funds are allocated for non-lethal, which is becoming, back in 2014, non-lethal was much more of an experiment. It has been proven. It's being embraced more by Wildlife Services even now. So there's even more reason to give more money to non-lethal programs and to cut back on whatever the state feels is necessary for lethal control. Okay, so that's the Wolf Depredation Control Board. It was set to expire, I believe, in 2019. They got rid of the sunset clause and made it a permanent piece of appropriations. And we are the only state that uses taxpayer money to kill wolves, as far as I am aware. So now we've got the ramping up of regulations that's occurred from 2012 till now. In 2012, people were allowed to kill 5 wolves in a year. Now they can kill 30. That's 15 via hunting and 15 via trapping, except that you just have to have both kinds of licenses to buy 15 tags of each, and you can use those interchangeably for whichever practice you so choose. So you could kill all 30 through trapping. Last year, the limit was 20, and one individual did reach that mark. Very few individuals do a lot of damage in trapping wolves here in Idaho. And we've had snaring all along. Snaring does present, and so does trapping, a public hazard. We have a lot of people's dogs getting caught in traps. A couple are killed every year. So let's see. And then trapping has expanded from 2012 to cover about 25% of the state to now it is in 97 of 99 units. So roughly 98% of the state. And so trapping, and then the seasons have expanded dramatically as well. And one of the ways in which they're justifying this is they've decided to, the Fish and Game, through pressure from legislature, has decided to identify chronic depredation as the loss of one animal in each of 4 out of the last 5 years in one hunting unit. So that's a pretty low criteria. In Oregon, for contrast, it's 3 depredation events in a 12-month period, or 1 that is confirmed, or 1 confirmed and at least 4 probable in a 12-month period. So that's a much more difficult criteria to meet. So in this low criteria, this low bar, they've identified that for depredation on livestock, and then they also have just determined wherever they feel elk are below what their objective is, that would also be a place where they could ratchet up pressure on the wolf population. So that in turn ends up being a little more than half the state, which as of now, we have year-round hunting in those areas. We have 11-month hunting in the rest of the state. We have, and they actually decided to tack on 5 more units to the depredation and predation criteria, even though they didn't fit. The salmon region wanted to have those right there on the Montana border in the Beaverhead area and the Lemhis. So now, also in those areas of about half the states, trapping has been set to open on September 10th. It used to be November 15th. So that adds a few more months of a time of year when there's no snow on the ground, which allows for more take of wolves, but also all the bycatch, the accidental targets that get killed by traps. So that will be in place as of next fall for September 10th. October 10th is where it is in the rest of the state, and it's been added to make trapping legal of wolves on private land year-round. As of just a few, most of these changes that I just spoke of happened about a week ago. So 120,000 elk, 700 wolves, 2.5 million cattle, 300,000 sheep. So the loss of 1 sheep or 1 cow in each of 4 of the last 5 years in any hunting unit is considered chronic depredation. And then there's a little bit of reason to question, perhaps a lot of reason to question, some of the livestock depredation investigations. I'd encourage you to read Carter's book, who opened this, introduced today, was part of the opening panel. With his book, Wolfer, really dives into that issue. It's certainly a good read. Okay, so let's see here. Foundation for Wildlife Management and Idaho Trappers Association are 2 entities that drive a lot of these policy changes that we've seen in the last several years, because they submit proposals to Fish and Game many of which they adopt and put forth for public comment. Some proposals they do put forth for public comment, others they just advance in their commission meetings, Fish and Games Commission meetings, on the spot, on the fly, without any opportunity for public comment. So Foundation for Wildlife Management, for those of you who do not know who they are the entity that is trying to get active in Montana. They pay out a bounty of about $500 to $1,000 per wolf for what they call reimbursement of costs. So there's financial incentive now to get out there and, here in Idaho, you could make $30,000 in a year killing wolves. Okay, I think, that might cover it. Tallassee, is there anything else that I should talk about?
Well, I think that you've pretty much covered it. And I will talk a little bit about how to protect wolves. But first, I want to just give a quick foundation, just a little bit of information for those who don't know about wildlife management generally and how wolves are managed. So when wolves were listed under the Endangered Species Act, they were federally managed by the United States Fish and Wildlife Service. When they were delisted, that took away that federal oversight for the most part, at least after 5 years post delisting. And now they, in Idaho and Montana and Wyoming also at this point, are managed by the state. So it's a state thing for the most part. All the regulation is done by the state. In addition, there is a federal agency within the United States Department of Agriculture called Wildlife Services that exists to respond to complaints from livestock producers about wolf depredations, and they typically kill wolves, although of course there's lots of non-lethal methods that are proven effective or more effective than killing wolves. So that's just like kind of a little tiny in a nutshell overview. And if folks have other questions about that, I can respond to them. But so without further ado, what can you do to help wolves? Well, the first thing is stay informed about Idaho's wolves. And while one would think that it should be pretty easy, it's not all that easy to do. And so we've suggested in our materials some places that you can go for information. You can sign up for newsletters and mailing lists from our organizations, Western Watersheds Project and Living with Wolves. Also, the Wildlife News blog is a good source of information, as is the Wood River Wolf Project. And you can also sign up to receive emails from the Idaho Department of Fish and Game. And we have a link to their website in our materials as well. I actually didn't know that you could do that until Garrick made me aware. And I'm sure that it's a good way to stay in touch because Idaho Fish and Game is less than transparent about these things. You can also participate in public processes around decision making. So keep informed about proposals that are being considered, submit comments during public comment periods, go to the meetings of the Wolf Control Board and the Idaho Fish and Game Commission. Just let them know that the public is watching and encourage others to do the same. They need to know that there are people out there that care about wolves, that are paying attention and that are watching what they're doing. And there's two more. I'm going to switch them. So you can engage and inform your community by submitting letters to the editor, alerting media to things, and organizing folks to participate in community events. That's important because that's getting folks out and who care about wolves and, showing people that there is a constituency for wolves in Idaho. And then finally, because it seems like state folks don't care about our perspective and really don't have any desire to manage wolves in a responsible way, I think that the best way that we can encourage them to do better is to say, hey, you're reducing wolves to a level where we're probably going to need Endangered Species Act listing again. And so I think that the way to do that is to talk to your elected officials, call up your state and your state legislators, members of the state legislature, and also your congressmen and senators. Call the governor, tell them that demand responsible science-based wildlife management, and encourage other people to do the same. And in particular, also call your fish and game commissioner. I don't think that they probably hear from members of the non-hunting and trapping public very much at all, and they need to hear from you. And in our materials, we have included some talking points for you all to think about using should you do all these things. And we're also certainly happy to answer questions and direct you to additional sources of information.
That was great. Thank you so much, you guys. That was really informative. And again, you've got the handouts that were emailed to you with all of this information. And of course, if you have any other questions later, you can reach out to each of these speakers individually. We're going to move on to Wyoming. And Kristen, you're going to start.
Great. Thanks, Paula and Steve. And thanks again to everyone that's contributed so far and put this on. I can't echo enough everything that's been said already. Wyoming has a little bit of a different situation than Idaho and Montana, as the rider that was attached to the congressional bill that delisted wolves in Idaho and Montana didn't apply to Wyoming at the time. So with the reintroduction to wolves in Yellowstone in 1995, the state of Wyoming immediately set into place coming up with a management plan that was going to be very strict and wasn't going to allow wolves outside of a small area of northwest Wyoming. So the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service actually declared Wyoming's plan inadequate and basically said that no, Wyoming, we're not going to let you delist wolves. We're not going to return state management to you. And then it turned out there was a court decision, and there's been court decisions kind of off and on. You can look at the timeline that I listed in the handout that was sent to you. But basically the end of all of that is that wolves, for some reason, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service finally just decided to change their minds and accept that Wyoming's management plan was adequate, even though that they hadn't changed it at all since 2011. And that is the current wolf management plan that is in place today in Wyoming. And wolves were taken off the endangered species list in Wyoming in 2012. And there was a hunting season for 2012 and 2013. And then in 2014, a court case put them back on the endangered species list. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the state of Wyoming appealed that decision, and wolves were delisted again in 2017. And since then, there has been a hunting season on them throughout the state. So in a small corner of northwest Wyoming, and you'll see there's a map as well in the handout that kind of shows you where wolves are listed as what is called a trophy game animal. This is animals that are mountain lions, grizzly bears, if they were delisted, black bears, and gray wolves. And so Wyoming, has really just set the bar so low that they have said that we're just going to contain wolves to the northwest corner of the state and not allow them to be pretty much anywhere else in the state. And a lot of times we hear that there's not areas that are socially acceptable in the rest of Wyoming. It has nothing to do with biology. There's never been any kind of policy studies or social sciences done to determine, what does or does not constitute socially acceptable areas. And the state of Wyoming has made it very clear that they're not going to allow wolves to be anywhere outside of the state, outside of what is called the trophy game management area. And that is just pretty much the area that surrounds Yellowstone National Park. So it's to the east of Yellowstone National Park, Grand Teton National Park, and then down into kind of just west of the Wind River Range. Wolves there are, so there is a hunting season. It was originally started on October 1 and went until December 31st. But that has been extended in the past 2 years. It's also, there's used to be just one tag per hunter. Now you can allow 2 tags per hunter. And the hunting season goes for an extended period of time to March 31st in one of the areas to quote unquote protect bighorn sheep. There's a bighorn sheep herd there that has been historically hurt by diseases and other things, but are not preyed upon by wolves. But that has been the reasoning as to why to extend the season there so that the wolves don't disturb the bighorn sheep. But people and horses are still allowed in there at that time. And then the hunting season 2 years ago was bumped back out to September 1st was the starting date. After 1 year of that, they moved it to September 15th to help protect quote unquote pups, because most of the wolves that are killed in the early season turn out to be juveniles or pups that are less than a year to a year and a half old. So Wyoming has no other plans than to keep the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has said that you only need to make sure that you have 150 wolves or 15 breeding pairs, and 100 of those wolves and 5 of those breeding pairs can be inside Yellowstone National Park. The 100 and then the 10 breeding pairs can be outside of Yellowstone National Park and Grand Teton National Parks and the rest of the state. So that is the limit that they try to stay at, and Wyoming does everything in their power to keep them. They have provided a buffer of 10 additional wolves, so 160 wolves is their kind of their goal that they aim for each year. There's also, once again, as Kim and Mark and everybody else has said, there is a really robust elk population in the state right now. There's more than 125,000 elk. They are above objective by more than 30% in the state, and we've had bumper hunting years as well. So the elk are not being harmed in any way, shape, or form. And as we've seen in Yellowstone, we've had really a lot of health return to the ecosystem there. And so, yeah, I think there's also when wolves were taken off the endangered species list, the Game and Fish Department has to keep a kind of track of them for an additional 5 years afterward. And so that 5 years is up next year. So we know right now the Wyoming Game and Fish Department does a very aggressive collaring program. Back in 2019, there were 94 wolves out of roughly 300 or so that were collared, and those are kept very close track of. And usually a lot of times if there's depredation on livestock, then they use that collaring information to help find those wolves and kill them. So with this kind of next year coming up, eventually we're not going to know, we're going to be in the same situation that Montana and Idaho are, where we don't really know how many wolves are out there on the landscape. And with that, I will turn it over to Lisa, who's going to talk a little bit more about what it means to be a predator in Wyoming and some of the trapping situations that we have here.
Thanks, Kristen. Good job. So Kristen talked about 15% of the state, and I'm going to talk about the other 85% of the state where wolves don't count in the numbers that are counted in management of Wyoming. They have no value to anyone except to hunt, trap, kill in any manner, any time of the year. But first I want to say thanks, Betsy and Paula and Steve. We really appreciate this opportunity. Also, I'm Lisa Robertson, co-founder and president of Wyoming Untrapped, based in Jackson, Wyoming. Our mission promotes trapping reform through education and advocacy, much like many of you. We envision a future where inhumane traps and snares are unimaginable. In 2012, wolves were delisted in Wyoming, and we launched a Facebook page that day called Wyoming Wolves Untrapped, and it was to create a forum for all of those who are absolutely outraged that we were going to treat wolves in this manner after all these years of recovery. And then we were going to treat wolves in 85% of our state like vermin. Traps were already littering the landscape, pets were getting caught, and we began the process of learning about the brutal face of trapping in Wyoming. We didn't know anything about trapping. And we were stunned. We were sad and shocked. So we kicked in gear and we started a nonprofit with a name change to Wyoming Untrapped. So that tells you what outrage can do. We formed an organization. We've been fighting ever since. We've tried to cultivate a new ethic of coexistence. We believe wolves or any other Wyoming wild animal should not be hunted or trapped for trophies. So currently in Wyoming, trapping is restricted to the outside the trophy game statewide zone, which is 15% of the state, and the predator zone is the rest. So what is required to trap a wolf in Wyoming? Not very much. You don't even need a trapping license. All you need is a trap with your ID on it. That's it. It's free. State statute requires reporting a wolf harvest within 10 days, the name and address, the date the wolf was killed, the sex of the wolf, and the location killed. Any electronic radio collar must be surrendered to the department. Since delisting wolves in 2012, Wyoming Game and Fish manages wolves to the minimums, as Kristen mentioned, and it's required by regulations outside Yellowstone and the Wind River Reservation. So statewide, 15 breeding pair, 150 wolves, trophy game, 10 breeding pair, plus 100 wolves. And then currently, we probably have the lowest number of wolves in Wyoming since delisting. Is that right, Kristen? I think that's true. 10 plus breeding pairs and 160 wolves includes a buffer, and Game and Fish is trying to keep that buffer. This year, they took it pretty low. Predatory area wolves are not counted and are not included in the wolf management numbers. Again, so in 2012 we had 19 breeding pairs, 224 wolves, and then in 2019 we're down to 10 breeding pairs and 160 wolves. It may seem we gave some trapping numbers for you in the chart. They seem low, but it may seem like they're low numbers. But the number of wolves in Wyoming is low. We've already been through the elimination process, and it seems fairly quiet in Wyoming right now, but that can change in a year. And, you know, the reason that could change is because we will finish the 5-year probation period with Fish and Wildlife Service on May 1st, 2022. We don't know what will happen in the long run there, but we do want to say that the basic dynamic is that Wyoming made certain commitments to obtain federal wolf delisting by Fish and Wildlife Service. And if Wyoming violates those commitments, the remedy is for Fish and Wildlife Service to relist the wolves. Last week, I did talk to one of the wolf managers in Game and Fish. He provided this statement last week in regard to ongoing management and population commitments. There are no provisions written in statute, regulation, or the wolf management plan that bring about an automatic change to our management approach once the 5-year post-delisting monitoring period is up. So everything will remain consistent with these regulatory documents until such a time as they are revised through the public process. If at all, we are charged to abide by those provisions. Wyoming Game and Fish will have full management next year, and we expect their commitments to remain in action, and we'll be watching, we're paying attention. As most of you know, on another topic related to trapping, a Yellowstone wolf number 1155, known as Max, was illegally trapped or trapped and then shot and killed by Governor Giaforte in Montana. The governor had not met the requirement to complete a trapper education course. So we have initiated a Why Max campaign. It's WY Max. We are just starting. We're going to give Max a voice. Other organizations have given wildlife a voice, but we're going to give Max a voice and every wild animal that is trapped and killed inhumanely. We've got bumper stickers on order. They'll be available next week. I'm sorry I don't have it in the background to show you. But meanwhile, we need everyone to please join our newsletter, to stay tuned on these campaign events, because we're going to push this topic hard, and we're going to raise awareness as much as we can. We've provided some Wyoming wolf management talking points which we have used consistently. However, in late April, the Game and Fish Department will provide recommendations for state trapping reform following an intensive collaborative public process for trapping reform, which we have been a part of for this year. And it is in response to a petition that we submitted January in 2020 for trap-free zones statewide. We will reach out to each of you to provide public comment at that time, so we really need for you to join our newsletter and to get involved. If you reach out to our Wyoming decision makers, I don't want to preach to you, but it's very different in Wyoming. You need to be respectful, you need to be courteous. It's usually most effective to be persuasive, not rude, sarcastic, or angry. Original words or personal stories directly from your own heart and mind are more likely to be given consideration than words and phrases that sound scripted. You need to talk to them in your own words. It's very, very important. You don't even need to say it through Wyoming Untrapped or Wyoming Wildlife Advocates. You just need to talk from your heart. We will research the facts. We give the details. We provide the take actions, just like everyone else who's here. We need you to get involved, learn, show up, take action. We cannot do this without your support. We need numbers. We need large, large numbers of people. We need crowds. We need people banging on the door to get in peacefully and be there and show up. Nothing else matters unless we vote for those in office that we want to be there. And then just 2 more sentences. All of the organizations speaking today are working exhaustingly for preservation and protection of wolves and other wildlife. We are giving everything we can give. We only have so much energy. We need new, fresh energy. I can't say this enough. So whatever you can do to support us in any way, all of these organizations take action. Thank you.
Yeah, and I would just like to back up too about just letters to the editor and informing people about what's going on. Even if you're from out of state, write a local, a letter to your local paper, just telling people what's going on in Wyoming and Montana and Idaho and other parts of the U.S. with wolves. People just don't know out there. So, yeah, use your voice as much as you can to help wolves.
Thank you, guys. Some wise words there. Can everybody hear me okay? Am I too loud?
We're having too loud.
I'm either too loud or too quiet.
So. Jonathan, is good, Casey? Okay, good.
We have a couple of minutes for questions, and Paul is going to read some of the questions off from the viewers. But before we do that, I just want to say that what these people said, please go to their websites, please sign up for their newsletters, please stay in touch with what's going on. And I think I have a quick question. I guess we're going to have to answer the questions pretty short because we've only got about 10 minutes left. But I think this is really for Garrick. I guess the question is, when we always say, at least we're not Idaho, unfortunately, because it's probably the worst place in the country right now for wolves. And as we move across the country, talking to different people in this event today, we're going to see there's different issues, and some have worse issues than others, and some have things to look for. And I guess the question to you, Garrick, is, what does Montana need to look for? What does Wyoming need to look for? What does California need to look for to avoid, dealing with the things that you're dealing right now in Idaho? I mean, there's, I know that's a big question to answer, but are there some key points that people need to look out for?
I know I was thinking about a few of these just yesterday. I'm only thinking of the Wolf Depredation Control Board for now. A lot of it's already on Montana's doorsteps, snaring, increased quotas. But the Wolf Depredation Control Board would be something definitely to look out for, and year-round hunting. So a lot of it's happening now, but same, and then we have to look out for reclassification, which is a dangerous thing for states to do. But in, as was being discussed in Wyoming, wolves are predators in 80-something% of the state. And a predator classification for an animal that was an endangered species is a pretty extreme swing. So we all can learn from each other for sure. But the Wolf Depredation Control Board is very damaging here. And then the actions of this bounty paying group is also really consequential. 200 to 250 registered wolf trappers in Idaho are doing as much damage as 40,000 hunters that have a wolf tag in their sportsman combo package here in Idaho.
I'd also like to add that another thing that states should be watching out for is new ways of counting wolves that lead to inflated wolf population estimates. Because in these states, the more wolves the powers that be can find, the more wolves they're going to be trying to kill. And so, you know, if you have a new way of counting wolves that shows there's a lot of wolves, then all the Fish and Game's going to say is, oh, we have too many wolves, let's kill them.
And Catherine, that's the question you were asking about PALM, which is, you know, it's so inaccurate that it works in their favor to inflate the numbers. And so that's why, Kim, you can probably go into a little more detail about that.
Thank you. PALM, population occupancy modeling, it's literally the lowest form of counting wolves. So it's the cheapest form. It's a mathematical formula. So population occupancy modeling, PALM, was brought about, and if you put the right numbers in and you have that ability to go out and actually count these wolves physically, you know it can work. It's a plus minus variance. So it's all based on how many variances you have. The more variances you have, the more skewed the numbers are going to be. A lot of these states use it because it's cheap. You don't have to get anybody out on the ground to do it. But as professional biologists will say, PALM is a ballpark figure number. So it starts out with the number you put into the equation, all the variances, and then poof, you come out with this number. The best form of counting wolves is aerial and on the ground, because you're actually counting wolves. This is a guess, and then they put a variance in there. So Montana has come up with their own now. It's called the IPALM, which is the improved PALM, that is being brought about and studied through the University of Montana, I believe. It's still not even peer reviewed, and yet Montana is using it as their way of counting wolves. And hence, we've got this massively inflated number, but it doesn't work and it doesn't compute when you look at the amount of wolves we had in 2017, which was 600 and something. They killed 300. So you keep adding this, all of a sudden, with the amount of wolves they're killing, we still have this massively skewed number every year. So it's interesting.
I'd like to touch on that just a little bit. Here's what's going on. You have a senior leadership within Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks that is frankly hell-bent on killing as many wolves as they can to appease the hunting community, to make it easier to hunt wolves or elk, and to help the outfitting industry. So the senior leadership is the problem. The boots on the ground people, the regular in-day, out-day biologists are, first of all, they're afraid to speak to anybody because they're worried about their jobs. So there's intimidation within the department to keep quiet. But when they talk to us quietly on the side, and you know, you can't reveal that information because you want to protect your source, they're painting a whole different picture on the amount of wolves that are in Montana. But you got to understand, they're afraid for their jobs, and I get that. But keep that in mind when you're dealing with the department. Go after the senior leadership, not the boots on the ground folks.
Same in Idaho.
So, you know, a lot of people are actually asking if you guys could just very briefly, we only have a few more minutes, could reiterate for each state what the top maybe 3 actions constituents can take and the top 3 or such actions non-constituents can take for each state.
I think as far as constituents go, contact your local elected officials, because any bills that are going to have to, you know, go, a lot of this stuff is going to require law changes. And so contacting your elected officials to let them know how you feel and that you want change, and have them try and bring a bill is really important. You know, speaking out about it, at going to your local Wyoming or state game and fish commission, meetings. Now with the pandemic, we have Zoom that, we can watch the legislative meetings on Zoom. So you can tune in there and speak up there as well. I think that's really important. As far as non-constituents, I think, like Lisa said, just call, a handwritten letter or a phone call is worth 10 million emails. So calling or, and even if you talk to a staffer and you don't get somebody, they still matter as well. So call and make sure that your voice is heard. And Wyoming is nearly 50% public land. You own the land here, and wolves are part of that. So don't feel like you don't have a voice here either, even though, we do hear from legislators that they don't want to hear from people outside the state. You do still have a say here and a stake in what happens in the state. Maybe would somebody else like to chime in about any of the other states and what you feel like might be effective there?
I just want to throw in that when you do get a staffer, don't feel disappointed, because it's actually a plus, because many of those staffers are going to be the next politicians in who you're trying to reach. So building a relationship with those people, the assistants and such, from the very beginning is really great. So by the time they become your legislator, you already have a relationship with them.
I would like to just interject really quick about, I hear a lot of folks out there talking about boycotting. I am 100% against that. I believe that these states are incredible, they're beautiful, and they deserve to be visited. My take on this, because boycotts just haven't worked in the past, flood these states. When you want to go to Montana, and you want to go to Yellowstone, you want to go to Glacier, you want to, hit the Frank Church, whatever you want to do, but make those phone calls. Talk to these people at the hotels that you're going to stay in, restaurants, gas, you name it, convenience stores, wherever you're going. Walk in and say, I'm in this state to see wolves. When I make reservations for a hotel, curiosity, I'm coming to the state to see wolves and wildlife. Do you support that? If these people hem and haw, they say yes, great. If they say no, you know what? I'm going to go to the guy down the street. Thank you. We're here to see wolves. Iterate, reiterate, reiterate. They need to know we are here and we're in droves and we love our wildlife. That's a big thing for me. Call the tourism boards in these states. Let them know. I want to come, but I'm hearing you guys are killing everything. I don't want to show up, but that's the case. I want to see these wildlife. So those are really big things on my behalf. Listen to the folks, listen to the podcast, that kind of a thing. Thanks.
Idaho, you guys, it just seems so hopeless for Idaho. Can you just reiterate one more time a couple of things that can inspire us and empower us to try and make a difference?
Sure. Yeah. So, Idaho Fish and Game occasionally solicits public comment on various proposals. And it's hard to find out about those, which is why you should sign up for the Idaho Fish and Game alerts. But also, groups like Living with Wolves and Western Watersheds Project do put out messenger alerts when there are opportunities for comment. And I think that even if you live out of state, it's really powerful for the Fish and Game to receive, 40,000, or it would be really powerful for them to receive 40,000 negative comments against their proposals to expand wolf trapping. So that's one way that you can help, even if you don't live here. Also, talking with your own elected officials and saying, hey, I care about wolves. I want you to support wolf recovery nationwide. I think that they need to hear that too, whether you're in New Jersey or California or wherever you are. Everybody needs to be it needs to be a national issue and not just a local one. And then within the state, there's a whole bunch of different things you can do, but I think that the most powerful one is, and actually this one's out of state too, you can write letters to the editor, but in the state, I think the most powerful thing you can do is showing up. And that means going to the Fish and Game Commission meetings, even though they're depressing and gloomy, going to the Wolf Control Board meetings, even though they don't let you comment on anything. Just know it. These folks need to know that the public is paying attention and that we really care.
Yeah, and stay passionate, stay informed, don't feel defeated, and keep talking about this with your community. Things can generate from the ground up in a groundswell sort of way. So don't give up and keep